Hello, everybody, and hello, Nadia,
Hello.
and hello, Kerry.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. I'm super excited to have a guest today, and I just want to introduce her real quick before we go into our conversation. Kerry Blair is a registered dietitian and founder of Food for Fuel, high performance nutrition, and on Instagram, she's known as the Gymnast RD. She has a Bachelor of Science in Community Nutrition and Dietetics from Rutgers University and a Master's of Public Health and Health Education and Behavior Science at Rutgers University. She is a sports nutrition fellow, or she was a sports nutrition fellow at Drexel University and a certified health education specialist. And I get all that formal introduction out, but really, I've spoken to Kerry probably once a week for the past 3 years because I work with Kerry on the board for gymnastics medicine, where we try to do things to help keep gymnasts healthy. And I'll speak from a physical therapist standpoint. And I've learned so much about nutrition through Kerry. I feel like I could have an honorary degree, but maybe she wouldn't agree in nutrition at this point with all the stuff that I've learned from Kerry. When Nadia and I had a conversation about nutrition, again, we've had multiple conversations about nutrition. We had some questions, and Kerry was the first person I thought of to bring on the show today. So welcome, Kerry.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thank you for
Yeah.
coming. I'm going to start just by asking you what made you decide to become a registered dietitian?
Yeah, I guess growing up, I was always like into food, which I feel like you hear that a lot from dietitians. Even like when I was a little kid and you would ask, what do you want to be when you're growing up? I always said a chef because I love food. I love to cook. I love to eat. I love to explore and try new things and all of that. So I was always very interested in the world of food. Found out pretty quickly that the world of restaurants and being a chef was not really what was going to be for me. But paralleling my athletic career just really sparked my interest in how does food actually impact our bodies. I think growing up as an athlete, sports nutrition it was really a huge field back then. And the startings and the rumblings of it were definitely not in a sport like gymnastics. It was very focused on football and basketball and soccer and running and those kinds of things. But I was just very interested. I think what really opened my eyes as she hates when I tell this story, but growing up, my sister was also a gymnast and she was the pickiest eater that I probably even to this day have ever met. But she was always very tiny, right? She was always very sick. Like she was very talented in the gym, but she was always not like sickly in the hospital, but she always had her head in between her knees. She was always sitting down, sitting out, had a stomach ache, didn't feel good. And I would have these conversations with my mom and be like, maybe if she ate more than a handful of M&Ms and then tried to do 4 hours of gymnastics, she would feel better. Like it was almost obvious to me, but nobody knew anything. Yeah, even going into college, I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to study. At first, I didn't think I wanted to do sports. I really wanted to do more like population health. I wanted to help people have access to food and have access to healthy food and understand nutrition and what that meant for them and in their life. And when I was really going through, my master's degree and my dietetic internship and all that sort of stuff was very much at the same time as everything with USA Gymnastics was going on and that big cultural reckoning. And there were so many stories coming out right across social media. Everybody had a Me Too sort of story. And while everyone's story is really unique, nothing was surprising to me. It's like, oh yeah, like that happened. Of course that happened. Of course that's how people talk about food. And even through all of that, we're still seeing these really wrong and terrible and harmful messages surrounding food and surrounding bodies within the sport of gymnastics. And nobody was saying the things that needed to be said. And nobody was really taking the research when it came to sports nutrition and saying, okay, how is this actually going to apply to a sport like gymnastics? How does this apply to athletes that are so young and at such high level at such a young age? So it was at that point I really pivoted and dove in headfirst to what I do now.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. Out of curiosity, is your sister a dietitian too?
No, she's not. She's in marketing.
yeah, but I feel like it's super important, especially for gymnastics. And I know we've talked about the same kind of scenario in dance as well. That I don't know, if nutrition's not talked about, then all the negative and toxic words that are being told to the gymnasts are just going to continue. And all we want is for gymnasts to be healthy. But in our last conversation, we talked a lot about orthorexia, or I guess, it was a new term that I had never heard about, but my mom brought it up. I wanted to ask you what orthorexia is and how common is it really?
Yeah. So orthorexia is characterized in the spectrum of disordered eating. So it's not quite in the DSM right now, as if it were like anorexia or bulimia or binge eating or something like that. But it is basically on the spectrum of disordered eating. And it is an obsession and a preoccupation with healthy eating. And right, when we think about that, like, okay, being interested in healthy eating, right? That sounds like a really good thing. But with orthorexia, usually it becomes overwhelming. It becomes all encompassing. There's a lot of restriction that comes with it. There's a lot of fear, right? Fear of certain foods or different foods that are almost debilitating, right? There's fear of going to someone else's house and not knowing what's in the meal or the food that they provide and not being able to eat. There's fear of restaurants. There's fear of social eating. So there's a lot of fear and guilt and shame that goes along with it. And usually it becomes like more and more progressively restrictive where it takes over. And when we're looking at the literature, this term in general is very new. It's not much older than even 10 years. So the research on it is still very new and very limited. And the hard thing about orthorexia research is because it's not in the DSM, there's not a clear cut and dry, like this is characterized, right? There's not a clear and characterized diagnostic criteria at this point of this is like either you have it or you don't. It's a spectrum. And along with that, it's different for every person, right? Some of these activities or thoughts or behaviors could be fine for one person and could turn extremely disordered and disorienting for another person. So it's very hard. When you do look at the research, the studies are a bit all over the place, but especially in like young adults, college students, young adults, the research is saying anywhere between 25 to 30% of populations are struggling with this. And like I said, that's just from a handful of studies that are out there right now, but some will say less, some will say more. It's hard when the criteria is not quite there yet.
Did you
Yeah.
say 35%? I think maybe she
Yeah.
said 3 to 5%.
No.
That's a lot. I was wondering, I feel like when we had this conversation, just us two last time, I talked a lot about like how I feel like social media and specifically TikTok didn't know the term before, but I can recognize where I might have seen something like that on social media. Do you think that's how this term came about, or is it through, I don't know. I'm not sure. Does it match when social media was just becoming super popular?
I don't know when the term itself was coined, but I absolutely think social media has a huge, plays a huge component in how quickly this has spread. Because if we're thinking pre-social media, and that's probably really before your time, Nadia, but
Yeah.
before social media, diet information and especially diet misinformation and kind of these individual diet nuances were never shared to the masses in the mainstreams. Yeah, you got diet information from magazines and from it was passed down from grandparents to parents to kids. And there was always locker room talk and that sort of
Right.
stuff and within culture. But we've never been connected in the way that we are today, right? It's very easy to get caught in that comparison trap and it gives everyone a platform that not everybody should have a platform. I'm going to say it especially
Yeah.
when it comes to food and nutrition, right? Just because you eat or just because you achieved a certain physique or a certain look or a certain accolade personally doesn't make you an expert,
Yeah.
but it's social media is almost seen like that, especially on TikTok and on Diet Talk and all of that. It's what I eat in a day or healthy swaps that I make or Now it's how can I add 30 grams of protein to this meal or
Yeah.
something like that, which then people fall into, right? They say, oh, do I need to be doing that? Do I need to be scared of this ingredient? Do I need to cut this out? But what if I can't? What if it doesn't make sense for me? What if I don't like that? What if I can't afford that? And there's a lot of like guilt and shame for
Yeah.
seeing, okay, maybe this is how things should be done and I can't do that. Or that doesn't work for me, right? I'm wrong and bad. It's really
Right.
hard.
You also get mixed messages. I was just thinking about how we're having this conversation today. And yesterday, in my morning stroll through Instagram, I saw a post that talked about how important it is to do intermittent fasting and how that's healthy for you. It's important as humans because in like our caveman versions of ourselves, we didn't have food so readily available. I was like, okay, that makes sense. Then 2 posts later, it was something like, we should start off the morning with protein and extra like healthy foods because then your body doesn't feel like you're in a stress state and you're about to starve. It knows that you have access to good food. So start the morning early with proteins and healthy foods. I'm like, wait, both of these totally make sense if I just think
Mhm.
about it. But then what's the truth? And actually, probably the truth is in like the scientific literature. But then in addition to that, it's like in your own self too, because one of them could potentially be true for somebody and help
Mhm.
somebody. And then the other one could be true for somebody else.
Yeah, that's the hard thing too about nutrition. And it's a science. And usually we're studying them like we're trying to study the masses, right? We never want to see like a study that's an n equals one, but everyone is so genetically different, right? Whether that's preferences, food allergies, sensitivities, right? How your body reacts to certain foods that a lot of nutrition is okay, we take the literature and we know on a large scale what to be true. And then we say, okay, how does that apply to you
Hmm.
as an individual, as a person, a living, breathing person within the context of your personal environment? And that's what gets missed on social media.
Yeah, totally. So, going off of that, what kind of advice do you have or do you give to, I say young women, but also this applies to men as well, but trying to navigate diet culture and obtaining a healthy lifestyle without getting stuck within what everybody else is doing?
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of figuring yourself out. And if this is something you're interested in and something you're exploring, then with whatever is in your means, get that support for yourself. And so if it's nutrition, get an appointment with a registered dietitian and someone too that kind of specializes in what you're looking for, right? If you're an athlete, get someone that's going to help you with sports nutrition. If you desire weight loss, right? Get someone that's going to help you with that. If you have an history with an eating disorder, get someone that's going to specialize with that. Or there's thousands of specialties, even in the world of dietitians,
Right.
the same way that you wouldn't go to your cardiologist with a broken foot. I seek out that help. And in today's world, it's so easy to find a dietitian, right? Most of us work virtually. A lot of us take even health insurance to get access to that kind of personalized
Mm.
information in a way that works and way that makes sense, because that's the way that you're going to be able to sort through that noise
Yeah.
and be able to say, okay, not just what is right, what is wrong, but what actually applies to me and what can I just ignore? Or someone that you can actually bounce ideas off of and say, I heard this, or what about this, or this seems to be trending.
Hmm.
Tell me more. Actually teach me versus hey, you get a 15-second snippet of someone on Instagram or TikTok
Yeah.
yelling about an ingredient in a grocery store. Like, what are we actually getting out of that?
Yeah. I,
I don't know if if you're able to answer this, Carrie, but as you say that, find someone to get you the information for you that can help answer your questions and explore what's out there, the information that's out there. Even then, there's so many different options out there. We know that you have all this education and these credentials. and you are a registered dietitian. There are a lot of people that call themselves that are nutritionists, and there's different types of ways that you can get educated and call yourself a nutritionist. But even between outside of registered dietitian and nutritionist, say we're looking at a bunch of registered dietitians, there are like people that specialize in Ayurvedic health. And then there's like functional medicine. And then there's, I don't know, I'm sure that within the world of registered dietitians, there's again specialists. So then how do you sort through that? And then also, maybe you can speak a little bit to this audience of young adults, the difference that there might be between someone who is a nutritionist and a registered dietitian.
Yeah, of course. I almost say finding a dietitian, finding a therapist, it's almost like dating. You have to research them a little bit, even before scheduling an appointment with them. You can always call them or email them or their office, right? Sometimes whether they'll chat with you by email or message or even hop on the phone with you, you can ask them about their training. You can ask them about their philosophy and see if they're going to be a good fit. Right? If you're someone that, like you said, you want someone that helps with menopause or someone that can just teach you more about healthy eating, like ask them and they'll also be able to say, yes, I can help you with this, or this is not my specialty, but the dietitian world is really small. And most of the time they'll say, if I can't help you with this, try this person. This person might be a good fit for you. Because really, as dietitians, we just want help.
Yeah.
We're helpers. But you also said the difference between dietitians and nutritionists. And this is not true for every single country. But here in the United States, a registered dietitian is a clinical medical license. To become a dietitian, you have to have a certain amount of education. At this point, you do need a master's degree. So either your bachelor's or your master's has to be in that like dietetics field, but then you also have to, so if that was your undergrad, you have to have a affiliated or associated master's degree as well. And then you have to do an internship. So basically the same as like a nurse or anyone like that. For dietitians, it's about 1,200 hours of clinical supervised practice where you shadow and work under different people in the field doing different jobs. So in hospitals and long-term cares and food service and schools and outpatient clinics and community and right, all these different places. And then you have to sit for a board's exam. And then to maintain that credential, you have to do continuing education. I think it's 75 hours every 5 years or something like that. And then and then there's all these, like you said, advanced practice, even certifications, whether it's sports, weight management, menopause, all the things. And that takes even more, right? Learning and education and support and those sorts of things. So it's a lot to be a dietitian. Nutritionist is not a standardized like label here in the US. So there are people that call themselves nutritionists that are PhD educated, right? They just never sat for the RD exam. And right, I would trust them. I would trust them with my health. But then there are also people that took a 2-day online course and got a certification and can call themselves a nutritionist, or right, even people like that are personal trainers and took the whatever 2-day long course that goes with personal, like that falls under that umbrella, and they can call themselves a nutritionist. So it's very up in the air in terms of that. So not saying all nutritionists are bad or wrong, or they're not going to be helpful, or they're not going to help you, but it's not as standard as going through the dietitian field.
Yeah.
Did you know this already, Nadia?
I know there's a difference, and I assumed that registered dietitians had to go through more schooling and all of that, but I didn't know the exact stuff, which is, it's interesting how much, you had to do to get that RD like label and how little you had to do to tell someone online that you are a nutritionist and that you should listen. So everything I have to say. So it's definitely food for thought, which I guess.
Literally food for thought. Maybe that'll be the episode title. Okay, what about, I talk to you all the time about gymnastics, or I don't talk to you all the time. I hear you all the time talk about gymnastics nutrition. But I've never talked to you about the advice regarding gut health. And Nadia actually asked the question about brands like Poppy, which I don't know what Poppy is, but I wanted to, this is something that she's seen on TikTok.
Yeah, gut health is like a very new area of research in nutrition. It is like very much in its infancy, and there is so much that we don't know. At the same time, we know that everybody's gut and gut microbiome is different. So some of these, whether they're just like generic probiotics or right probiotic or prebiotic sodas or things like that, can be helpful or beneficial for some people, but maybe not others. It's very new. I think there is something there, but it's one of those that I think we really need to wait and see. We know that a healthy gut microbiome has positive impacts on all the systems of the body, whether it's brain health and mental health. It's of course it's digestion. It's really connected to all the things. And we know that our gut health thrives on foods that are called prebiotics, which are basically right high fiber, kind of those insoluble fiber foods. That's what they eat. So we want to have the diet rich in high fiber fruits and vegetables and beans and legumes and those sorts of things because they feed the good bacteria, and not even just the good bacteria, but it helps them stay in balance, right? Because these bacteria, there's tons of different species even in our gut, and they're very symbiotic, right? They keep each other in check. But if one dies off, another one is going to take over. We really feed them through prebiotic foods, probiotic foods, things like fermented foods, yogurt, kimchi, that kind of stuff. That is can be shown to introduce helpful bacteria back into your gut. I think some of the oldest advice is like if you're on an antibiotic, make sure you're eating yogurt or right something like that to help avoid right that overgrowth of any one bacteria. But what we're also seeing is with a lot of these probiotic foods, one, it's very hard to see and to study the stability of them, right? Once the product is made and bottled and put on the shelf, if they're living organisms, are they continuing to grow or are they dying? And also, what is happening too when we eat them and we put them into our stomach, and that stomach acid, which is really very acidic pH, how much is of that is actually even getting through, or is it just being killed off, right, by the stomach acid and neutralized? So, right, it's like I said, it's very new. It's very interesting to learn more about. It's definitely not my personal area of expertise, but I could definitely connect you with someone if you want to dive more into that conversation.
Yeah.
In terms of the products that are out there, a lot of times they're very expensive, right? Because they're trendy. Something like a poppy is going to be much more expensive than even like a sparkling water, or definitely more than a soda or something like that. And if it makes sense in your budget and you like it, great. But the jury's kind of still out on if it's doing what we say and what we expect it to be doing.
Yeah. Speaking of expensive ways to fuel your body, there's also vitamins and supplements to think about. And I remember when Nadia went to college, I think it was, or maybe it was like the December after she had already been in college. One of my stocking stuffers that that I got for the kids was like vitamins. I forgot what brand. It was a cute brand. I don't know, Oli or something like that in Target. And they had all these things like these are the vitamins if you are in college, and these are the vitamins if you're in high school. And I think it was supposedly supposed to address whatever things you have going on in college. And I think Nadia's might have had melatonin in it. And then my mom saw it and I heard melatonin's not good for young people. I don't remember what it was. But my point is, there are a lot of really good looking, attractive vitamins out there. And then also a lot of like compelling advice out there, even if it's not a cute bottle, but compelling advice about what supplements you should be taking. Do you have any advice for a college-aged female in general? I know we talked about getting specific advice for your needs, but in general, college age students are lacking iron or vitamin D? Is there some general information like that someone could explore a little bit more? And then do you recommend a college aged student, female, to get blood work done to see whether or not it's true that they fit that kind of need?
Yeah, the world of supplements is like the Wild West out there, as much as it's up for, it feels like it's up for debate these days, right? Our food system is very well regulated, right? If you're picking up a food on the shelf, you can turn it around and trust, right? What is on the nutrition facts label, what is in the ingredients facts label is what is in the food, and what is not on the label is not in the food. Supplements are really poorly regulated. There is very little oversight, and especially because so many supplements are not even manufactured here in the US, it's very difficult to know that not only what is on the package and on the label is what you're actually getting in terms of dose, all that sort of stuff, but also what's not on the package is not in there, right? So we can talk about contaminations and harmful substances, adulterated substances when we're talking about athletes and sports, right? Banned substances. When we're thinking about supplements just in general, and I think this is even, it can even be helpful for non-athletes too, but especially for athletes, looking for supplements that have some sort of third party testing done. So, what that really means is that an outside company, right, someone that has zero financial investment in that supplement doing well or not, or any sort of investment, comes in and, right, reviews it, tests the tests the supplement to guarantee that what is in the supplement is there, what is not on the on the label is there, making sure the claims even are supported and all of that. So looking for a third party supplement or a third party seal can be really important. So for something like vitamins, usually the big one we see is USP when we're talking more like supplements. So in terms of things like protein powders and pre-workouts and right, that kind of stuff. Usually I'm looking for something for my athletes. I'm always looking for NSF, safe for informed sport or informed choice. And again, even for non-athletes, right, at least knowing that this has been tested. And these third party seals are very different than, right? Sometimes there's just like a whole bunch of stamps or a whole bunch of stickers, or you go to their website and there's, right, this long list, or right, they'll say, even say like clinical trials or clinical studies or those kinds of things. But when you really read it and get down to what they're saying, they're citing studies that are like anecdotal, right? Or they're saying this ingredient has been shown to do this at this dose, but then the product that they're selling like only has 25% of that, right, in it. Or the research was done in-house. Like, of course, you're going to find some sort of benefit from your product if you're doing your own studies and you stand to make a financial gain off of this research coming out in one direction. So looking for kind of that third party seal can be really helpful. In terms of supplements, I think we get this idea that vitamins and supplements are harmless, right? Oh, I don't eat a super healthy diet, or I'm on campus and I'm in all the germs and doing all the things, and I can just take a couple of vitamins and cover my bases and it'll be fine. But that's actually not always the case, and for a couple of reasons. One, there's a handful of vitamins that are what we call fat soluble, meaning that they stay in our system for a long time, right? Things that are water soluble, you can take at a higher dose and your body will use what it needs and you'll pee out the rest. So, like B vitamins, vitamin C, that sort of stuff. Vitamins like vitamin D, which is a really popular one, is a fat soluble vitamin, right? So it stays in your system for a long time. If you're taking doses that you don't need, it can be harmful. A lot of minerals as well, they don't just work independently. They don't work by themselves. They work in conjunction with a lot of other vitamins and minerals within the body. So when we, for example, something I hear a lot of is iron, right? Oh, the percentage of iron deficiency is much higher than we expected in all females, but especially in athletes. Maybe I should just take an iron or something like that without actually knowing. But what ends up happening is when we take too much iron, it throws off things like calcium and copper and right, B vitamins. And right, there's a whole bunch of other things that go all sorts of whack when we get too much. Or zinc is another one that people really want to throw at their immune systems in the winter. But like it can wreak havoc on your body if you take too much for too long, and it can cause all sorts of other problems. There's, in terms of like vitamins and that sort of stuff, there's some things that are generally considered safe for most people, right? A multivitamin that is appropriate, right? Gender appropriate, age appropriate, that sort of stuff. Again, if we're looking at the back, if it's got give or take 100% or so of the micronutrients, right? We don't want anything that's 2000% of your daily needs because that's excessive. A multivitamin is not everybody doesn't need it. You can absolutely get all your vitamins and minerals from a balanced diet. It's usually seen as pretty safe. Things like fish oil, that sort of stuff. But beyond that, it's actually much more specific. And yeah, I am an advocate of blood work, as not fun as it is if you're going for a yearly physical, which, most people should be. And again, if you've got access to any sort of health insurance, right, any sort of preventative care like that is going to be covered. And as long as you advocate for yourself, they will send you for blood work and you can get a picture and see if anything is off, right? If your vitamin D is chronically low, you probably could need a supplement. But if your vitamin D is at normal levels, you don't actually need that supplement. Not only is it harmful for your body, but don't spend the money.
We actually we had a personal experience with this actually. And Nadia had to advocate for herself to get tested for vitamin D and wasn't really getting much support from her physician. So we had to like add in, and she's already a full grown adult at this point, not full grown, but 19. And we had to give her words as parents who are medical professionals. Like they wanted to know, like, why do you want your vitamin D tested? And I don't know why they wouldn't just do it because she was getting blood work anyway, but she had to advocate for it. And then she got it. And before that, they said, just take the vitamin D. Everybody's low on vitamin D. And we're like, okay, but shouldn't we just check? And so then she checked it and it was very low.
Yeah.
She had to get a bolus. Like, it was so low. And so either way, that was bad on both ends. She really had to push for it. I can see why someone doesn't want someone to get blood work or poked if they don't need to, but she was getting the blood work done anyway for some other stuff. So like, why not ask for the vitamin D and why question it? And then why recommend the vitamin D if you don't even know what her levels are? And then, oh my goodness, actually you need a lot. So that's the case. Is there anything that people should ask for? Like it wasn't standard that she was going to get vitamin D. So what should she ask for?
Vitamin D should always be, I don't understand why it's not standard because like you said, it is really common for vitamin D to be low, and especially in the winter. And as someone, I'm sure like you're from California, but you moved to Boston, right? I'm sure that sent your body into a shock, right? That in itself should have been a key for your doctor to say, oh, she's probably not adapting to this very well. So that's definitely one. I'm always an advocate for females to check their iron and their iron level, just because we lose iron through menstruation. And especially if you have like irregular or very heavy periods, that sort of stuff, iron is so crucial for our body that's one I always advocate for testing. And right, there's a whole like world out there of different types of tests for different electrolytes and like serum versus cellular levels and even like hair mineral testing and all that sort of stuff right now. And it really just depends on like how deep you want to dive into all of this. If you're not noticing anything with your body, like you don't, I wouldn't advocate for all the things, but if something does not feel right or something is off, definitely advocate for it.
Yeah.
That was a lot of food for thought. Not a snack. Okay. Anything else, Nadia?
No, I honestly like probably should listen to this again. And I really appreciate all your advice. And I think I feel like for me personally, my population, like I just see stuff on TikTok and just want to take it without questioning it or seeing where they might have gotten their dietary information from. So it was very helpful to hear what you had to say, and I really appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, you guys are so welcome.
Thanks, Carrie. Have a good rest of your weekend.
And you too.
Thank you.